Hello there friends, my name is Rachel GNS Middle, Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name and my middle name is my last name, and I am here on behalf of Forbear Theatre to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas through very pedantically ranking every element of them. This week we're going to be talking about duets. And also this week I have wet hair, so you'll be able to see how my hair dries throughout the course of making this video. Some of what I consider to be duets might not have been called duets in the scores, and also similarly some of the numbers that are referred to in the scores as duets I have not included on this list. For example, How Would I Play This Part and Now Julia Come Consider It From, because I don't consider those to be duets, apart from maybe a very small bit of them. They are Julia's numbers and deserve to be judged as such. Since this is the first video where I'm going to be ranking numbers rather than roles, it took me quite a while to come up with a good method of discovering which were the best and which were the worst. I ended up not including a category for enjoyment like I did in the video where I discussed the soprano roles. There weren't too many cases of me giving a duet a high mark for enjoyment and low marks everywhere else, so all it felt like I was doing was making the songs that are done well do even better, which is a bit like what capitalism is doing to our country. So what I've ended up doing is I've given all of the duets a mark out of 20 for music. Now this involves the writing of the vocal line itself, it involves how skillfully Sullivan has set the piece. It also involves how complex the orchestration is, and what I've found in some of the duets that have ranked a lot higher is that they seem to be quite simple tunes on the surface, but there's a lot going on in the orchestra parts, which I really appreciate. I've also included a mark out of 10 for lyrics and a mark out of 10 for narrative importance. What this one means is, if this number were removed from the opera entirely, would the story still make exactly the same amount of sense? So if a number isn't terribly necessary and it's just characters regurgitating exactly what's happened in the scene, I typically started it off as a baseline of 5. Where I think songs actively confuse the audience, I've given them a mark less than 5. Usually I've given them a 6 or more, because even in songs where they're regurgitating stuff that's happened in the scene, usually there's some kind of added emotion onto that which makes it valuable. Speaking of emotions, I've also given each number a mark out of 10 for emotional value. This means that some of the really beautiful love duets have a chance to be bumped up a little bit, even if they don't have the same narrative importance as some of the other songs. I've also given each song a mark out of 10 for comedic value, because, lest we forget, these are supposed to be comic operas. I do feel like there are some numbers that were deliberately designed to be comic numbers, and I feel Sullivan may have held off in order to highlight what the lyrics are. And I think he does this more in the earlier operas than the later operas, but I still wanted to appreciate that songs can be very funny even if they're not hugely musically sophisticated, if that makes sense. So all in all, they get a score out of 60, just like the soprano roles did. So with that in mind, let's get started with number 47. Yes, it's going to be a long video. Number 47 is Here, Far Away from All the World from Thespis. Now, I cannot possibly judge the music of this number because there is no music for this number, and that does prove problematic. However, what I can do is I can look at the lyrics and look at other songs in the canon that have similar lyrics. So, generic love songs that could be about anybody, and think, what might Sullivan have done with this? And generally, Sullivan's straight love duets that don't have any narrative value aren't typically his best work. I'm not saying I could do any better, I'm just saying when you compare them to Sullivan's other work, his love duets do tend to be some of the least inspiring, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a 10 out of 20. It's a guess, maybe it was wonderful, we will never know. I've also given it a 5 for lyrics. I don't think the lyrics are particularly clever. Gilbert's certainly done better than that before. A 5 out of 10 for narrative importance. It's not confusing for the audience, but I don't think that anyone particularly wants to hear this number. I think they want to get to Climbing Over Rocky Mountain, if I'm honest. I gave it a 3 for emotional value and a 3 for comedic value. It's certainly not very funny, and Perhaps it would have been emotional if we cared at all about these characters, but thus far they've actually been relatively unpleasant. Not necessarily mean, but not particularly characters that you care about whether they're happy or not. So all in all, I don't think this is a great duet. I give it 25 out of 60. However, from now on, every duet gets at least half marks, which means it's decent. So I would say, apart from the one duet whose music we don't even know, I really do love all these duets. Number 46, I've given to Things Are Seldom What They Seem from HMS Pinafore. And I have lots of happy memories with this song. I played Little Buttercup. She was my first ever principal role in a GNS opera. I don't think it's really either of their best, and I think that it confuses the audience in a way that's not necessary. I imagine that at the time it was the convention that a character had a big secret that was going to come out at the end, and I appreciate that that's what Gilbert was doing here narratively, and his lyrics are fine, they're quite clever, they flow nicely, but I don't think it's particularly meaningful as far as the characters are concerned. You don't really learn anything new about the characters, you're just sitting with what's said in the scene. There is some comedic value to be had. I gave it a 7 for comedic value because of those big bum 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 brum. You can usually do quite a lot of fun things with that as an actor/director. So it does have some value and I don't hate it. It's just not my favourite. Number 45 I have given to The Battle's Roar is from Ruddigore. Now this is one where it actually ranks quite highly in some categories, but I just have like a big thing about it. I gave it a 15 out of 20 musically. Where it falls down, lyrics, they're okay. I gave it a 5. I think Gilbert's done better. It's got some emotional value, kind of. It's not at all funny. I mean, it could have been so funny. This is my issue with this song. So you have Rose, who's this very uptight person, and the charm of her comes from how repressed she is. And then you have Dick Dauntless, who's this polar opposite, who's this big rough sailor who's like a big puppy, doesn't really know his strength. He's not the cleverest person. In this song could have just been about any two people in love. This is a completely generic song, and it's actually very jarring, and I think it does a disservice to the narrative because it erodes what we believe about these two people to be their prominent characteristics and what it is that has made the show so engaging up until this point. It seems that, unlike in other numbers, we have to put our conceptions about these two characters on hold and just enjoy the number out of context for what it is. And in that regard, this is probably the only number in the whole canon that I think there is an argument to cut. Because I think that not only is it not even terribly good, I think it does a huge disservice to Gilbert's narrative. All we see is these two people who have been on these two different levels suddenly coming onto the same level immediately, but not even in a way that's funny or ironic. There's no message there, and I think that this song is not good because of that. But it's not come bottom because it is musically better than the ones below it. Number 44 is another song that I don't like, but I think my arguments about not liking it aren't as strong, is Rapture from the Yeomen of the Guard. I gave it a 14 out of 20 for music, slightly lower than Battles or Reserve. What you can say about this song that's good, that at least the two characters retain their characters in the song. Fine. Musically it's good, the lyrics are clever, they do trip off the tongue. Fine, not quite as nicely as they do in some of the other numbers. What I don't like about it is the fact that I imagine it was put in only to give Elsie time to change and because, oh, we need to wrap up this story about these characters that we haven't been told to care about. It doesn't have a great deal of emotional value because the stakes are not high here. We have been guided by the narrative not to look at this relationship as if it was ever going to be something real or important. And because of that, it isn't an emotional duet, it is a comedic duet. So we are supposed to look at this relationship as, oh, how funny that Meryl has been forced to marry Carruthers, which is a little bit problematic, but I'm not going to get into that because I think that worse things happen in other areas. It's mostly the fact that it's been a bit shoehorned in there, this whole romance between Meryl and Carruthers. It's just a tool to wrap up the plot hole of Phoebe, Leonard and Meryl rescuing Fairfax. Having said that, it's okay, it's funny. I've seen it done in funny ways. I didn't cut it when I directed it. I almost did, and then I didn't. I think it was the right decision to keep it in. It's a bit of light relief before the finale. Fine. I think I'm biased about this one. Maybe you can explain to me in the comments why it's really good and try and change my mind about this one. Number 43 is a song from the same opera, I Have a Song to Sing. Oh. Now, I gave this a 12 out of 20 for music. I think that was, if anything, quite generous, but it is beautiful even if it is simple. I gave it a 5 for lyrics. The lyrics are nice. They're not particularly relevant to the characters, but that's okay. They're pretty lyrics. I gave it a 6 out of 10 for narrative importance, because even if the song itself doesn't really bear any relevance to these two characters, it is incredibly important to have that song there so that we can go back to it at the end of the show. And I do think because of that, it does have a really worthy place where it is. I gave it a 5 out of 10 for emotional importance, because even though it's hugely important at the end, the actual content of the song itself I don't think arouses in people very strong emotions for these characters because we've just met them. But I do appreciate its inclusion based on what happens later. I gave it a 4 out of 10 for comedic value. I think it's not particularly funny, and it probably could have been funny. In fact, if you think about it, if the song had been a bit funnier and sillier, that may have been so darkly tragic at the end to bring that back. That could have been quite interesting, and I wonder how the opera would have been different if that had happened. Number 42 is To Help Unhappy Commoners / Small Titles and Orders. I gave it only a 10 out of 20 for music because it is simple, and elsewhere Sullivan has created some very complex orchestration around these simple melodies, but this time that didn't really happen. And I think that this is one of the most underdeveloped numbers in the Gondoliers. Gondoliers is gorgeous musically generally, but this to me certainly is a slightly weaker point musically. I gave it a 5 out of 10 for its emotional importance. It doesn't really have any relevance to the story. It doesn't actively sabotage the story, but it's not a plot line that I think people are terribly interested in. And also I don't think the lyrics have aged terribly well. You have to understand quite a bit about the terms in it to really get what's going on. I didn't myself understand this song until I directed it. And when I say I directed it, my musical director did most of the directing for this number because I was in the number as Casilda. So I still don't quite understand some of the lyrics, if I'm being honest. I only gave it a 3 out of 10 for emotional importance because it has pretty much no emotional importance. I did though give it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value because I think it can be very funny. Not because the lyrics are laugh out loud funny, but because the Duke and the Duchess are just quite comedic characters. And it does give the director a lot of scope to put these characters in situations which could be amusing. Number 41 I've given to Words of Love Too Loudly Spoken from Utopia Limited. There are 8 duets from Utopia Limited in this list. I gave it a 16 out of 20 for music. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning, the music in this number. I think he's done better elsewhere, but this one truly is gorgeous, and it's got this wonderful, like, floaty, ethereal quality to it. Just give it a listen. Oh, it's gorgeous. I gave it a 6 for lyrics. It's pretty, but not particularly relevant to the characters. I gave it a 5 for narrative importance. Again, it doesn't actively sabotage the narrative, but it doesn't further it either. You don't learn anything more about these two characters with this song. You just think, oh yeah, I guess they are quite in love and are expressing it. I gave it a 6 for emotional importance. I think it would be more emotional if we knew / cared about these characters. These are not terribly well-formed characters, in my opinion. And for that reason, I don't think we really root for their relationship in the same way we might root for Mabel and Frederick. I gave it a 3 for comedic value. I think that's, if anything, generous. I'm not even sure why I gave it a 3. Finally, we are into the top 40. Number 40 is None Shall Part Us From Each Other from Iolanthe. I think this duet is slightly better than the one before it because we care for the characters a little bit more, even though they've only had one scene. Strephon and Phyllis are just great characters. I gave it a 6 for lyrics. They're nice lyrics. maybe not as groundbreaking as some of the ones above. It's very descriptive language. It's up to the actors to really paint a picture in our minds of this I'm the tree and you're the flower and the river. But I do think it's the number in Iolanthe that I care about the least. But even considering that, I still really like this number. I think it's so beautiful and I always enjoy it. But I'm waiting for the peers to come on. This is just the moment of stillness before they come on. And moments of stillness are important. It does have its value. I gave it a 7 for emotional value. I think it's really emotional and lovely. But I did only give it a 3 for comedic value because it's not very funny, really. Number 39 goes to Now Wouldn't You Like to Rule the Roost by Princess Ida. I've just realised that I have tea. Do you ever suddenly realise you have tea and it's at the exact correct temperature to drink? It's just, what a joy. It's also nice just to hold the cup because we're in a cost of living crisis. So, it's clever lyrically. I gave it a 14 out of 20 for music, 7 for lyrics, 6 for narrative importance. I think it does further the narrative slightly. We are regurgitating stuff in a scene before, but it becomes more meaningful with the addition of music. And reiterating that point is a good thing for the audience who haven't really got to know Blanche yet and are only just starting to grow to really love Melissa. So I think it does have a place in the narrative and I do appreciate it. I only gave it a 4 for emotional importance. We are led to believe in the previous scene that there are high stakes here, but this song does not feel high stakes. I think that as soon as this song begins, it's pretty obvious what Blanche's decision is going to be. So I never feel stakes from this number, and it wouldn't be right to have stakes. The music does not reflect any kind of simmering tension between these two people, like there's any danger that Melissa's going to be punished here. I did give it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value because I think they're just funny characters. The lyrics are not laugh out loud funny, I don't think, to be honest, but Melissa and Blanche are just such funny characters that I think they can do a lot with this, and it just gives them a chance to show themselves. So I do like this number. It's just not one that I particularly look forward to in Princess Ida, especially considering all the amazing numbers that happen before it and the Act 2 finale soon after it. Number 38 I've given to Kind Captain, I've Important Information. Now this is one that's actually got an 8 out of 10 for its narrative importance because we do learn something through the course of the song, or rather we see the captain learning something. We experience the captain being given the information. And I think its lyrics are pretty clever. I've also given it a 13 out of 20 for music. I don't think it's Sullivan's best music, but it certainly fits the situation. I don't think it's terribly emotional. I think it can be. It depends on what the actors do. But if anything, the little that like comes between each verse, I think that can be a hindrance rather than a help. I like it. I think it's very funny, but if you're going to make a choice to have that be a comedy song, it does slightly take away from the stakes of the situation. But it is a difficult song to direct because the music does feel a little bit at odds with the severity of the situation. And then again, sometimes that's Gilbert and Sullivan's strength. Sometimes what they do is they take a hugely emotional life and death situation and they trivialise it in such a way that's tremendously, charmingly absurd. And I like that. And that comes up a lot later in the list, actually. So I do not dislike this song by any means. I do like this song a lot. I like all of these songs. This is hard. These are low down the list simply because they're just not quite as good as some of the other ones later. Number 37 is Oh, I Have Wrought Much Evil With My Spells from The Sorcerer. Now this is one that probably lost a lot of marks for music. I only gave it an 11. And the reason for that is that while there are other duets and indeed other numbers in Gilbert and Sullivan where Sullivan seamlessly moves through different tunes and he'll manage to join these tunes together. But for me in this song, the joins between the different sections don't feel quite as flowy as they do in maybe some of the other songs. So think about Mabel and Frederick's duet that I'm going to be talking about much later, and think how well those sections flow together, and then think about the sections in this song. They don't quite fit as well. I'm going to find what I mean. So I've just looked it up, and I don't like the transition before what is this fairy form I see before me, and oh horrible, is going to adore me. And for a start, I just find it's irritating because he's not drunk any of the potion. And I know this is a plot hole that people love to discuss all the time, but it is a little bit jarring. It's like, oh god, okay, this is what's going to happen. Yet again, Iolanthe is too old and ugly to be loved, and I get it, it's a convention. I do think that Gilbert manages to subvert this convention and deal with it really well in other operas, like Patience and Mikado, but in this one, it's just a bit sad, really, to hear him talking about this younger woman that he loves when he's probably an appropriate age for Lady Sagamore. We don't know how old Wells is, but usually you see him played by an older person, don't you? And that jarring, for pity's sake, recall, not thus from me, and it doesn't sing well, you know? Then there's that weird echoing section where the lyrics have not aged terribly well, I don't think. I have no idea what One Tree Hill is. I have looked this up in the annotated Bradley, but it's not really shed much light to me about why this is funny. And I think it's meant to be hilarious. And people do laugh, so I think it's meant to be funny. I just don't think the lyrics are clever, really. At what I'm going to say. Like another jarring transition. I think it goes a bum 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 at what I'm going to say. It's just, I don't know, to a maiden. I don't think it's good, and it's weird because it's never really struck me before I started to make this video just how weak I feel this number is compared to other numbers in later operas that do similar things where they transition through different tunes. I'm actually quite surprised by how bad this is in a way. If you disagree, please tell me why. A lie! No maiden waits me there. I like that. That's cool. That's fun. And then they say the family vault. I'm going to count how many times they say family vault. Hold on. They say it 22 times. They say the word vault 22 times. Family vault is probably a few less than that. It's like what happened with Douglas Adams at the end of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that first book. They really wanted the book and they just said, oh, just finish the page you're on and just send it. I feel that's what happened here. I feel Gilbert just gave up. And I get that this song is really loved, and for that reason I did give it high marks for comedic value, so this meant that it didn't come dead last. It also does have emotional value because you empathise with Sanguisuel, so it does get beefed up in other categories, but I think when it comes to music and lyrics, the bones of what Gilbert and Sullivan did, I think this is the worst one, honestly. But because of good performances and it gives directors scope, I do think that brings it up a bit. But yeah. I left my tea bag in, so now it's really strong and it's a bit cold, but I'm drinking it. Number 36, I've given to Prithee, Pretty Maiden from Patience. Musically, I gave it a 13, not groundbreaking, but pretty, and I think it matches what's going on. He set it well. There wasn't really much he could do with this to make it more interesting. Lyrics I gave a 6. They're fine. They're actually quite funny, and I think this does have a lot of comedic value. I gave it a 7 for comedic value. So, gentle sir, although to marry I design, happy to say for Willow really, as yet I do not know you, and so I must decline. It is funny. It's very matter of fact, and I do enjoy how it's this very wholesome little charming song, and they're just being very polite to each other, even though they actually really love each other. But yeah, it's not got a huge dramatic impact or emotional value. It's just one of those numbers. It's like, oh, that's nice. And then it's over. Number 35, I've given to There Was a Time from the Gondoliers. This isn't a generic love duet like None Shall Part Us or Words of Love Too Lightly Spoken. This is actually relevant to the characters, and for that I have given it a really high emotional value. I gave it an 8 for emotion. I gave it a 16 for music. The music's so pretty, that beautiful bum, 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 before the choruses come in. It's got this really achingly beautiful nostalgic quality to it, and I think it does subconsciously invite the audience to remember their own past loves and how beautiful that feeling is that at one time you were really deeply connected to that person, and it might not be anymore, but you can still cherish the memory. And I think the music does that extremely well. The only reason this song hasn't done better is because I don't think the lyrics are as clever as they could have been. We've just had a duet from Louise and Casilda, and I don't think this one is quite as strong as that one. And even though it's lovely and it's pretty and it's moving, there are other romantic duets that I think are more moving than this one and have better music, potentially, and better lyrics. Number 34, I given to Long Years Ago from Patience. This is not a duet that I particularly value, but it has come quite high because I appreciate that it is very well loved. I gave it a 14 out of 20 for music. I think it's good music. It's got some fun counter melodies in it. I don't like it that Sullivan set the word misconstrue to be misconstrue. To me, that brings the song down a few points alone. I don't like it when people do that. I don't like it when the emphasis is wrong. When it's a joke, it's okay. Like when he changes discover to discover, that's kind of funny because of how bad it is. But I don't think this was meant to be like a funny mistake. I think it's just a bit lazy. But I think I'm probably the only person in the world that cares about that. So I'm willing to let that go. I gave it an 8 for narrative importance for obvious reasons. We learned some new information in it. We get to know more about Patience. I gave it a 6 for emotional importance because, well, we are learning about her loving somebody and it is quite a sad story that she's telling. I don't think it has as much emotional value as some of the ones we're going to be talking about. So for that reason, I did bring it down a bit. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value, just because I think that Angela's response to Patience, it can be quite funny. So it deserves to be quite high in that regard, I think. Number 33, I've given to one that I didn't include on the list initially because it didn't really seem like a duet, but on closer inspection, I think it is a duet. And this is Perhaps If You Address the Lady. I gave it a 16 for music. I love the music in Ida, and this is no exception. This is maybe not one of the most interesting numbers in it, but it's good. It's still good. 7 out of 10 for lyrics. I don't think the lyrics are particularly groundbreaking in terms of their sophistication, but I do think that Gilbert gave Sullivan a bit of a gift here, and Sullivan totally took that bait in a really good way. It allows the tension to build up on those lines and then dissolve again for the most politely. Perhaps if you address the lady most politely, flatter, da da da, and then we will hang you, never fear. Most politely. It does give, I think, the actors a bit of scope to be very funny, as we know sudden changes of mood that probably wouldn't happen in real life are quite funny to watch on stage because they're surprising, and I think this song does give the director and the actors a lot of scope to be funny, and that's the reason it's come so high up the list despite not being a terribly memorable number. Number 32 I've given to When I Go Out of Doors from Patience. A lot of people think this one is boring musically. I happen to think that it's really beautiful in its simplicity. I actually really enjoy the way it flows. The tune is incredibly catchy. The lyrics are really good. I've only given it a 7 because I don't know if the lyrics are necessarily particularly meaningful to the situations they found themselves in, but I do think they are very skillfully put together. Given it a 7 for narrative importance, even though we're just repeating some of the stuff said in the scene and adding extra colour to it. It is a really lovely way of ending that scene. We've really grown to love these two characters throughout this scene, and the song is more of the full stop to the scene than the feature. The scene is the feature, and this is like, and now we get to relax with the song. And so I do think that that is this song's function, and it is a really fun song. That alone does bring it up in the rankings, even if it is ostensibly quite a simple number. I gave it a 9 out of 10 for comedic value. That's the highest mark I've given for comedy so far, for obvious reasons. Not because the lyrics are particularly funny, but just because the characters are hugely funny and there's lots of scope to be brilliant. Number 31 I've given to Subjected to Your Heavenly Gaze from Utopia Limited. Another duet from Utopia Limited. Now, musically I gave it a 15. Now I think it is good. It's not as good as some of the other songs from Utopia Limited, but it is fine. It does get more interesting in the second half, I think. The first half is quite simple. The second half, we see some tension start to build there. This writer lies, yes, father his eyes, he lives, you say. That building of tension, and then that beautiful, Oh, royal Rex, my blameless sex, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And that's such a gorgeous tune. The issue with this song is that the lyrics are good and they do further the narrative, but they're so sophisticated that it's actually quite difficult to follow them. Gilbert seems to be a victim of his own lyrical sophistication here. It's quite hard to really get the meaning of what he's talking about. I don't think it's very clear what the story is in the song unless the actors do a really, really good job. This is a difficult song for a director, I think. So it's Lady Sophy saying, why aren't you killing this person that's writing all these terrible things about you? And then the king's just evading the question. But it's really not clear that it's about that. But I do have some comprehension issues. I have some focus issues. So maybe I'm the only person that finds this song difficult to comprehend. If so, please let me know. We're into the top 30. And we start off with I Once Was As Meek as a Newborn Lamb from Ruddigore. This got a relatively high mark musically. I gave it a 14, but it was definitely helped by the fact that it has a glorious introduction. It really brings you into that new environment, new situation. I think when the tune itself actually begins, I don't think it's quite as clever as some of his other work. I find the ha-has oddly placed. Maybe that was Gilbert's fault. Maybe Sullivan wasn't really quite sure how to place his ha-has. It is funny. It's got a really good comedic value and its lyrics are fine. I just think other lyrics are better than this one. But I gave it an 8 out of 10 for narrative importance. I think it reintroduces the characters in a really fun and engaging way, and it's a great start to the second half. It's just not as engaging or as interesting or as musically good as some of the other songs, but it does the job. Well done, GNS. Number 29 I have given to From Every Kind of Man from the Mikado. And this song, similarly to Perhaps If You Address the Lady, I don't think musically or lyrically it's terribly sophisticated, but what it is a perfect way of helping the audience understand these characters. In the case of the Mikado, for the first time, in the case of the alto part, just helping the audience understand a little bit more of who she is and what her relationship is to the Mikado. And that's what that song does, and it does it in a really, really funny way. It does it by introducing this person with a huge amount of status, and then that status is just stripped away by this random woman. Bow, bow to his daughter-in-law elect. I think that's really, really funny, and I absolutely love this number. I think when you've got two amazing actors in the role, they can really play off each other and make this number brilliant. But as I say, the bare bones of this material I don't think are amazing, but it does give the director a lot of emotional scope, a lot of comedic scope. I think it's a great opportunity for these two characters to shine, and for that reason it's come higher than some of the numbers that may be more musically interesting. Number 28 I've given to Oh Admirable Art from Utopia Limited. High mark musically, 16. I think the start is better than the second section. How good is that opening? Oh, admirable art, oh, neatly planned intention, oh, happy intervention, oh, well-constructed plot, oh, well-constructed... It's that key change, it's blossoming, it's absolutely gorgeous. I really love the start of this number. I do think when it moves into the slower section, even though it's still very pretty, the music does take a back seat to the lyrics, which on paper are funny, but I think in practice the joke takes a little bit long to say, and as a result, it's not really laugh out loud funny. It's like, oh, okay, it's quite funny. Yeah, he's wearing armor and means she can't hug him. You know, it's just, it's a long time for a joke that's not that funny. I do think it's weaker in its second half, but just that powerful opening did bring it further up than some of the other love duets like None Shall Part Us or There Was a Time. I think that it's got a lot of potential to be a really great number for these characters. And it is emotional, and I think it's just come out of this scene where Zara has her only real threat in the opera, where it seems like she might have to marry the king's advisors, who are these horrible guys instead of the person who she really loves. So there is a threat there. And this is where that threat dissolves. So that is quite a nice release of that tension. So it does have narrative importance and it does have emotional value, but it's probably the most emotional these characters ever get. Number 27, I've given to Hereupon, we're both agreed, from the Yeomen of the Guard. I think a lot of people might have put this higher in their personal lists, and I do think it's a really great number. I gave it a 15 out of 20 for music. I think the music is great, maybe not as good as some of the other numbers in the Yeomen of the Guard. I gave it a 7 for lyrics. I think its lyrics are funny. And I only gave it a 7 for narrative importance, because even though it's definitely extremely relevant to the narrative, and it does let you know a little bit more about Wilfred and Jack Point and maybe their relationship, and maybe they can start to teach each other a few things. It does give the director some scope to build that relationship a bit more, which I do appreciate. It's not terribly emotional. It is funny, most of all because they're saying cock. And that's just a funny word. I think that this is a number that is loved because it's loved rather than the actual content of it, and it is good, but I do think that there are 26 numbers that are better than it, in my personal point of view. So it's received love, and quite rightfully so, but I do think that love is a bit self-perpetuating, and there are other numbers that maybe should be given a bit more love. And let me explain why. Number 26. You Understand, from Ruddigore. This is a perfect full stop to this scene and a perfect introduction into the Act 1 finale. I love the placement of this duet. I love the release of tension we've got from that whole why am I moody and sad, and Despard's really tragic but also hilarious monologue. And then this really quite intense scene with Dick where he learns that his brother actually survives, and that could be a hugely emotional moment for him. So this song, even though in itself it's not particularly emotionally valuable, it is a big release of tension from that scene, and for that reason I really love where it is in the narrative. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for that. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for emotional importance, because you get this sense of relief from Despard, you get this sense of relief from Dick Dauntless, because he thinks, oh right, this situation's going to be sorted out, I'm going to get to marry Rose. It's a very lovely end to this scene. I think if you took the material for what it was and just examined it out of context, it might not have come so high, but just because it's so well placed narratively, it did come a bit higher than I thought it would. And I don't regret putting it here. I think it's the perfect spot for it. I love this number, and I love the tune. The lyrics just trip off the tongue as well. One of these examples of patter that's actually quite easy to get out. There's a lot you can do with this number, and it is gone before you even realise it's happened, but I appreciate it, and I just wanted this number to know that I noticed it. Number 25 I've given to Oh Rapture, When Alone Together, from the Gondoliers. Depending on how you direct/act it, it could be a big surprise, or it could be, yeah, we saw that coming. But no matter how you choose to do it, it is really narratively important, because you get to learn about these characters as well through understanding how they love each other. You get to learn that Cassilda's a bit mischievous, very clever. You get to learn that Louise is just very sweet and understands her sense of humour and really does genuinely love her in a way that you don't really necessarily read about in Victorian times. You don't read about men being particularly sweet or tender with women, and for that I've given it like a really high emotional value. I think it's beautiful. I love their love. I think it's really sweet and precious. 16 for music, 9 for emotional value, 6 for comedic value, because even if it's not a particularly, it's not a rolling around on the floor hilarious number, there are funny moments to be had. They can tease each other in it a little bit. I think it's also just quite funny for the audience to get that release of tension after they've had to be quite standoffish with each other in the previous scene. So I think in that sense it's emotional, it's comedic. I would say that if you were thinking of numbers that are brilliant in Gilbert and Sullivan, this one may not really feature. I don't think it's as memorable as some of the others, but it's a lovely one, and I think it deserves to be thought of highly. Number 24 I have given to Our Lady Sophy / O Rapture Unrestrained, another duet from Utopia Limited. The music of it gives me this absolute inexplicable rush of serotonin, especially in the song part with the Rapture, Unrestrained. I think the lovely, and that is why you did not fire the author on the spot. I think that gave it a high comedic value because it's funny and it's silly. But that last tune, there's something about that just like hits me, it like attacks me in my heart, and it makes me joyful. I don't know, perhaps if that was just luck, maybe I heard it first at a very good time of my life. I don't know, but there's something about the quality of that last duet and the way they keep exchanging, has vanished, vanished, vanished in the distance, in the distance, in the distance. That bit, I can't sing two voices at once. Why? But the way that happens just, oh, it just makes me want to cry. I love that. And the absolute beauty of that realization that they were so concerned and they don't have to worry anymore, they can be together. Oh, it's lovely. It's one of the most touching moments romantically in GNS, and it's purely because of the music. The lyrics are lovely, but I think Sullivan did a really good job here. I only gave it a 6 for lyrics. I don't think it is lyrically that sophisticated, but I did give it an 8 for narrative importance because it does involve story. Like, stuff actually happens in this music which furthers the plot. The characters get information, and then it gets 2 8s. It gets 8 for comedic value, 8 for emotional importance. I think it's just beautiful, this number, and I hope that the passion with which I'm talking about it is making you excited for what's coming next, because this is number 24. I think there are 23 duets that are better than this one, and that seems right now to be unbelievable, but let's see. Number 23 I've given to Refrain, Audacious Tar from HMS Pinafore. Thinking about this now, I wouldn't have thought that it was better than the one previously, but if I'm forced to be very unbiased and think about, right, how good is the music? The music's lovely, 15 out of 20. I gave it a 7 for lyrics. The lyrics flow nicely. I gave it a 9 for narrative importance, because even though they're reiterating stuff said in the scene, you really get a window into their minds, because you get this contrasting music. You get the big refrain, audacious tar, and I'd laugh my rank to scorn and union holy, were he more highly born than I more lowly. So you get an insight into the characters' feelings, which I think is more pronounced than it was in the one I previously talked about. You really get to learn about their characters and the story progresses. And here's my first 10. I gave this a 10 out of 10 for emotional importance. Oh God, this one. And when you consider that this number goes straight into Rafe's big recit, and then him almost unaliving himself in front of the entire chorus, it just shows how high the stakes have to be in that song and how much weight that song should be given as actors and a director. It is a hugely emotional moment. It's not very funny. I think that's why I only got 5 out of 10. And it might seem unfair that I've got that comedy category, but then there are numbers that are really high across the board later. So I do think that we have to appreciate that Gilbert was able to find such joy in really dark moments in other numbers where he didn't in this one. 22 I have given to Pretty Lisa, Fair and Tasty. Music, 16. All of the music in the Grand Duke is very good. 7 for lyrics. A lot of them got 7 for lyrics. 7 is kind of what I consider Gilbert standard. Better than average, but there are some that are particularly good. So I don't think this quite breaks the barrier of being particularly good. It flows very well and it's very appropriate to the characters, so I think it's a solid 7. I gave it an 8 for narrative importance. It's a great way of introducing these characters. A lot of what I consider to be narrative importance is how well characters are introduced or reintroduced, or how well they work through things. And this is an introduction song, so it's not hugely emotional, but it's actually more emotional than a lot of introduction songs. So for that reason, it gets a relatively high mark for emotional value. You can clearly see how much Lisa loves Ludwig. From the start of the Grand Duke, Lisa just has this huge well of love And that is all she is as a character, but in a way it's enough. I do love Lisa as a character. So yeah, I do think this duet is good. I love the scope the MD has to do tempo changes, and it's got this gorgeous kind of German waltz. I really do love the music here, and it fits perfectly what the characters are doing. Bum ba-da-ba-dum ba-da-ba-dum bum bum, pretty Lisa. It is gorgeous. It's very Straussian in a way. Is that valid? Musical friends, did I say something clever or stupid just then? Number 21, I've given to There is Beauty in the Bellow of the Blast. Another really well-loved number that maybe some people thought would come higher. I do think that part of the love for this number, again, is because it's very loved and that is a little bit self-perpetuating, but it's also loved because the characters are so good and they have the scope for a lot of comedy in this song. And reflective of that, I've given it an 8 for comedic value, but I only gave it a 7 for emotional importance. I do think it's quite a nice end to the scene in that we learn that the Patter guy actually might have a really lovely marriage with the alto. It seems like they're not very well matched, but maybe they might learn to love each other. And there's hope there, and that's quite sweet. So I give it a 7 for emotional value, but it's certainly not as emotional as some of the other songs we've talked about. But I gave it a 9 for lyrics. The lyrics, I think, are beautiful. They trip very nicely off the tongue. And I gave it an 8 for narrative importance because in the same way as You Understand, I think it's a lovely full stop to the scene after the tension of Titwillow, and this song does help to dissolve some of that tension from that scene. So for that reason, it is a very clever song and I really like it. We are now into the top 20 of the duets of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas. So stick around because number 1 will surprise you. Number 20 is With Fury Deep We Burn from Utopia Limited. Now, I remember as a joke, Forbear Theatre included With Fury Deep We Burn as an example of a song that would never be high on any list. Like, we thought of forgettable songs in Gilbert and Sullivan and put this one on it, but it's actually really, really good. And it's hugely emotional in a way that really not many Gilbert and Sullivan songs are. You don't get to experience a lot of anger in the operas. There's one song which I can't wait to talk about in my tenor arias video, which I believe is going to be next, where you do get to experience that, and it's actually extremely powerful. They, as characters, are furious. And if this is delivered with utter conviction, oh, it gives me goosebumps. I think this is a really strong number and shouldn't be thrown away. The lyrics are clever. I don't think they're quite as clever as these characters' other duets, but they trip off the tongue. I love how they keep exchanging words, and it comes to this amazing climax, and this won't do. Oh. In the strings. Oh, it's just this churning anger. I kind of wish that Sullivan had given more of a chance to write villains because he does a great job of it here. These villains are incredible. The music is what does it. The music is what makes this for me. But the lyrics are also very clever and the characters are fantastic. Where it loses points is its comedic value. It doesn't score very highly, and its narrative importance I only gave a 7 because it's quite short, and despite how good I think it is ultimately relatively forgettable in the larger opera. This is not a number that you really think about. You probably think more about the trio that comes after it, but this is a really fantastic number. And if it was longer, I think it may have come higher, but really good. I mean, go and listen to it. It really is incredible, this song. I love it. Number 19 is Oh False One, You Have Deceived Me from the Pirates of Penzance. What a corker. What a brilliant song. It furthers the narrative. Yes, we're regurgitating stuff from the scene, but we do get to examine the characters a little bit more. So we get to see Ruth either being genuinely vulnerable or using her vulnerability to manipulate Frederick. It depends how you want to play it, how you want to direct it. There's lots of ways you can go with this. You can make it so Ruth is like a real threat to Frederick in this number, which is kind of exciting. You can make it so that she's this very sad old woman who was delusional about their relationship. There's so much you can do with this. I only gave it a 15 for music, which is probably why it didn't come higher. I think it's lovely music. There are just some that I think are better than this one. And I only gave it a 7 for lyrics, because again, I don't think Gilbert's quite breached that boundary here of extremely sophisticated and clever lyrics. They're not as lyrically amazing as some of the others. But it's narrative importance, 9, emotional importance, 8. I do think the emotional importance is slightly diluted by the predatory element of the situation. I think it can make it a bit confusing for the audience. I think maybe they're not exactly sure of what they're supposed to be feeling towards Ruth. She's a character that's likable, but then she did this horrible thing. So just because of that and that lack of complete emotional clarity, I've only given it an 8 rather than something much higher, even though the stakes are really high in this song. It is funny. I've given it a 7 out of 10. It's not laugh out loud funny, but the 47 years is quite funny. This got 47 out of 60. How funny is that? That's really great. So not only are there 47 songs in this list, but this one got 47 out of 60. Number 19 is If We're Weak Enough to Tarry from Iolanthe. Now this one is another one that I think would have done better if it had been a bit longer. It's a bit of a throwaway song, but again, perfect full stop to the end of that scene. Perfect wrapping up of their relationship in the way that these are not the most emotional characters, they're not the most eloquent and honest in their communication, but that's much more like reality than these couples that are very open and honest in their communication with each other. And their misunderstandings are what makes them so funny. I've given it a 7 out of 10 for emotional value, just because I think these characters are more comedic than emotional. I think the real heart of this is the Lord Chancellor and Iolanthe that just comes afterwards. I did give it, though, a 9 for comedic value because these characters are so funny and they get to play off each other in it. I probably would have given it a 10 had it been longer. I don't think it quite matches the comedy of some of the other ones. This ending to these two characters is the perfect end of the scene. The only reason it didn't come higher is because I don't think it has quite the same weight that some of the others have. Number 17 is In Vain to Us You Plead, also from Iolanthe. This is another one that I wasn't quite sure if I should call it a duet or not, because it's kind of the chorus, and Celia and Layla I consider to be chorus principals, but this is a duet in its own right, I think. So, and it's called a duet and a score, so it was one that I was like, I don't know, but ultimately I did include it. 16 out of 20 for music. Oh, lovely pizzicato strings. 8 for lyrics, very funny. First 10 out of 10 for comedic value. This is a hilarious song, and I love its inclusion because it gives Celia and Layla the chance as chorus principals to really shine. It doesn't have huge emotional weight. The fairies have literally just decided, oh, suddenly we love you, and fine. But you know, it's one of those things that Gilbert does, these sudden changes of heart. But as a song in itself, I think it does have relative emotional importance. I only gave it a 7 for narrative importance because of that jarring sudden change. Oh, okay, you're in love with them, no, fine. But it is very funny. The lyrics are good and the music's good. So I think it's a really good duet. Number 16, I've given to another song that I've pulled out of a larger number, and that is Oh Listen to Me Dear from the Grand Duke. It's probably the shortest one I'm going to talk about on the whole list, but I thought it was just long enough to include, just long enough to be considered a duet kind of in its own right. This duet lets us know about the contents of characters' heads extremely well, more so than almost any other number in this canon. But it doesn't do that necessarily through the lyrics, because if you take the lyrics at face value, they're actually being very polite to each other. But there's this simmering kind of sinister quality to the music that tells us what's actually going on in their heads. So for me, the brilliance of this number comes from the fact that the music so accurately tells us what's in the characters' heads and tells the characters pretty much exactly what to do, movement-wise and acting-wise. Because it's so polite. And the thing is, this is reality. This in reality is how people communicate. They don't say what they're really feeling. Oh, my darling, you couldn't play this part. You're just not quite good enough, my darling. I would say that when I did the Grand Duke in the summer, when I played Julia, this was my second favourite moment of the show. My favourite is obviously the big monologue in the second act, but I love this moment. And if I was to play Lisa, I think I'd feel the same about it. This moment of being utterly crushed by another human being, and us just get to watch that with this grim fascination, this quite sociopathic character just completely crushing the hopes and dreams of this lovely, very sweet person. And that's the reason it came so high on the list. It got an 8 out of 10 for emotional value. I only gave it a 7 for comedic value because even though it is funny, it's not laugh out loud funny in the way some of the others are. It's more funny because you just can't believe how awful Julia is. Number 16, I've given to Welcome Joy, Adieu to Sadness from The Sorcerer. I gave it a 15 for music. It's lovely music and very well suited to the situation. It's got this quite baroque, stately quality to it. Again, was that right? Did I say a clever thing? I hope so. I love how the music perfectly encapsulates the very stiff formality of how these two characters are brought up to be, but then you also get that contrast with the what of fascination mad, or whatever the lyrics are. When you get to see these two characters, what's really inside their head, and how everyone in this world is really stiff and formal and flat, but then inside they have these rich inner lives. I think it's quite daring for the 1870s. In a world where formality and class and status was extremely important, Gilbert and Sullivan are showing us here that everyone is the same in their heads. We're all wild with emotion in our heads, and it's just that we have to put on this front because society has taught us to do a certain thing. This could have gone to a very dark place, but it's just very funny. Gave it a 9 for lyrics, really cleverly done. I gave it a 9 for narrative importance. This is when you get to learn about these two characters. Before they were these stiff, rather upper class, boring people, but no, they're not. I gave it an 8 for emotional value. I gave it a 7 for comedic value. I don't know if it's really laugh out loud funny. I also happen to think that it might be a touch too long, and I do think that when people watch this number they can sometimes lose a bit of concentration. I wish it had been a tiny bit shorter. Number 14 I've given to Big Bombs, Small Bombs from The Grand Duke, another one that I've pulled out of a finale. I appreciate that if you listen to a recording of this song, it seems to go past very quickly, but I'm talking about the full uncut version. My first ever experience of singing Gilbert and Sullivan was being in a concert at my first year of university, and the person who put together the concert was obviously very knowledgeable about GNS. He'd done a programme that had featured numbers from every opera, and this, and I think probably Mystic Regulation, he picked from Grand Duke. And we did the full version of it. So we did the when to men at Tempalus, all other words they use. You don't often get to hear the full version of that, but believe me, when you do, I don't know why people cut that, because it's really, really very good. What really makes this song is the way the chorus are completely transfixed by what's going on. In that sense, maybe it wasn't very fair to include it as a duet, but I felt like at its heart it's a duet and they are responding, and the focus is entirely on the two people fighting. In reality, Rudolph and Ludwig actually know exactly what's going to happen, but the chorus don't. And I think that's what makes it very funny. I think audiences like being let in on secrets and then seeing that other people haven't yet learned that. And musically it's obviously brilliant because it's the Grand Duke and everything in the Grand Duke is great. 8 for lyrics, very clever, sophisticated. I think Gilbert did a really good job with all the rhymes here. Narrative importance obviously is extremely important. It then gets 8 across the board. So it gets 8 for emotional value. We know as an audience the stakes aren't life and death, but we can still empathise with the chorus who do feel that. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for comedy for that reason. I love this number, and it's a perfect start to the Act 1 finale. Number 13 is another duet from the Grand Duke, as a penny roll we sing. Again, musically, it's beautiful. We even get this lovely tango at the end of it, which is really fun for the characters. Even if we don't learn much new information or any information that's relevant to the story, we do get to learn a bit more about Rudolph and the Baroness's characters. It gives the director and the actors scope to really show how much they kind of get off on being frugal. And there's a lot of scope for comedy there. For that reason, I gave it a 9 out of 10 for comedic value, because it's quite fun to watch these two quite uptight characters, or uptight at first glance, sort of let themselves go in this tremendous song and dance number. And it's lovely to see their relationship in a bit more of a dynamic and exciting way than just in a dialogue. It's a lovely end to the scene. I think that a lot of people do cut it in half, which I think is correct. I think it's very long if you include that full version. It's long enough like that. We perfectly get the point. Very funny, very good musically, full of character. Number 12 I have given to We're Called Gondolieri from the Gondoliers, another number that I've pulled out of a larger number, but I have to. This is an absolutely iconic, very famous duet, beautiful lyrically, gorgeous musically. 19 out of 20 for music. Oh, I love this one. The lyrics are really good as well. Where this one falls down is it's not got a terribly high comedic value. It's not terribly important narratively either. The reason being, Marco and Giuseppe aren't very well-defined characters as it is. I don't think that this song really tells you much about who they are. Oh, these people are popular. They manage to please us. They do a lot of stuff that we like. But other than that, they're not terribly well-defined characters, and I think because of that, this song will lose points because it just lacks a bit of emotional and dramatic weight. But it is gorgeous, and the opening of the Gondoliers is the highlight of the show for me, and this is probably the highlight of the opening. I think very highly of this number. Number 11 I've given to Happily Coupled Are We from Ruddigore. This is one that I initially missed off the list because it didn't occur to me that it was a duet, but I'm like, oh wait, of course it's a duet. It is. And funnily enough, this duet does precisely what I wanted the first one to do, the one that I don't like, the Battles Warriors are. Because what this duet does is, for a start, it's way better musically. It's so rich and interesting. I gave it a 19 out of 20 for the music. It's glorious. Interesting orchestration. Sullivan understands how to paint the words in a way that increases the tension of each line. But you also get to learn about the characters as well, and how they're dealing with their differences, and how they probably shouldn't really have got married because they're quite different people, and this probably isn't going to work out very well for either of them. But again, even though it's dark material, it's presented in a comedic way. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value. Again, it's not side-splitting humour, but it is funny to see how they're so different and how it's not really going to work out. The setting of the words and the words themselves feel very good in my mouth. Lyrics great, music beautiful, very emotional. Narratively important because we get to learn more about the characters, but because the characters aren't very important after this, I think that does take a bit of the weight out of it. I wish we got to learn more about these characters. We are now in the top 10, and yeah, some of these will surprise you. They surprise me. And I'm sure that those of you who know the canon really well are thinking, well, she hasn't talked about this number yet. And well, yeah, it's because I'm going to be talking about it. It's in the top 10. Number 10 I've given to If the Light of Love's Lingering Ember, which is quite hard to say. 19 for music, obviously. Oh, what gorgeous music. The interweaving vocals and the orchestration and the way that it's set and the little sections contrast with each other. I'll haunt you each morning, each night and each day. Oh, it just gets me. Then spectred appalling, I bid you good day. It's jaunty, but it's also sinister, and it just perfectly fits the setting. Where this song maybe loses a couple of marks is its narrative importance and its emotional weight. I don't think at this point the audience is really rooting for Ernest and Julia romantically in the same way that they've maybe rooted emotionally for other characters in the canon. If you'd seen a bit more of Ernest and Julia before, or if Julia had maybe shown in the first act that she actually really does like Ernest, and maybe it's just her ego that's preventing her from being with him. Maybe it would have more weight then, but it's not clear to me why Julia does make the decision to be with Ernest in the end. Oh, you know, whatever, I'll do it. Number 9 goes to I Once Was a Very Abandoned Person from Ruddigore. This is one of those duets that is very much loved. I've seen it in dozens of concerts. It was one that when I was at university, it always ended up in pretty much every concert we did. I will say, I don't think the lyrics have aged that well, but for some reason you always manage to get away with it. You have to get actors to play these parts that really understand why this song is funny. In a way, it's perfect with its narrative importance. It reintroduces these characters and how they've changed, and boy have they changed. Mad Margaret is now much more stoic, but you can tell it's still there. You can tell these characters really are the same, but they're just pretending to have changed. You can tell that it's not going to last, and I think that's where the humour of that song comes from. Marmaduke and Lady Stangazier are very good at that formality, but Mad Margaret is not very good at formality. And Despard, well, I mean, there's lots of ways you can play Despard, but I always imagine him trying to pretend not to be put out by the way Margaret's acting in this number. Some of these jokes might seem laboured, like they are not remarkably entertaining. What's lovely about it is that it's formal, yet it is honest. So Margaret is not afraid to tell Despard what she really feels, and that must be a very weird situation for him. I do think that Despard has, as a result of the trauma that he's gone through in his life, because it is trauma, he spent his life, at first he lost his brother, and as a result of that he lost the woman who he had made a vow to, probably loved, we don't know, and then had to endure torture every single day for 10 years? And so he's completely emotionally repressed. And again, this could have gone to a very dark place. Gilbert could have taken this character to an extremely dark place, yet he's funny, and that's the joy of Gilbert and Sullivan. This is terribly hurt and traumatised character, but we're able to derive joy from that because he's just so likeable. And they're trying so hard. They're trying really, really hard to seamlessly go into everyday life again. So this guy had just spent the last 10 years committing crimes every day and being hated. And Margaret has spent the last 10 years like hanging around creepy places, obsessively watching this person and plotting to kill somebody. She is going to kill Rose Maybird out of jealousy, and just these characters are damaged characters, really, really damaged. But then they find each other and they have this connection, and they're trying so hard and they're really failing. And there's something so lovely about that, in the fact that they're really trying to fit back into society, but they're never going to belong there. They're too damaged, but they have each other. And there's something really sweet about that. So anyway, yeah, 10 out of 10 for comedic value, because of everything I've just said. The only place it lost any marks is like emotional value, because I think it is more of a comedic song. But as I said, it has the potential to be actually quite emotional. But usually it's not. People don't really take the initiative to do it like that. But who knows? Maybe this song, maybe I will see this song or perform in it one day and I'll realise, oh God, this should be completely top. Maybe. Who knows? Number 8, I have given to Although of Native Maids the Cream from Utopia Limited. Another duet from Utopia Limited. There are lots of them. This song, I mean, not only does it work so well out of context as a concert number, because everyone immediately knows what it's about, it works so well in the context of this absurdist artistic show, which is Utopia Limited, which doesn't have a very strong narrative. This song, though, it's extremely clear what it's about. These ladies are being very English, and possibly they've gone a little bit too far, but it's also a perfect way of seeing just how stupid formality is. How stupid convention is, and etiquette. It's a bit like Rose and Ruddigore as well. Like, the idea of following rules just for the sake of following them, rules which will be different in every culture you visit, it's useless. And this song is such a perfect representation of just how useless etiquette is. And I'm not talking about, you know, being polite to people. We should always be polite to everyone. But the extent to which people place importance on doing certain things and being conventional is absurd. Really, these characters, which are a bit more off the wall, like Mad Margaret, they are the sane ones. They are the real ones. This is what's mad. This. And as we stand like clockwork toys, a lecturer whom part employs proceeds to praise our modest ways and guileless character. It's perfect. The lyrics are good. The social commentary is good. Am I reading too much into this? I don't think I am. Again, I think it did lose marks from not being terribly emotional. I only gave it a 6 out of 10 for emotional value. But I gave it 18 for music, 8 for lyrics, 9 for narrative importance because of just how well it introduces these two characters as, oh, okay, this is what this show is going to be. 10 out of 10 for comedic value, obviously. But this number is always one that people come away saying, oh yeah, that number was dynamite. What a great number. What a great duet. Number 7, I have given to Yeomen of the Guard, one we haven't talked about in a while, because all of their other duets rank quite low comparative to this one. Like a Ghost His Vigil Keeping, which is another one that I wasn't sure if this really counted as a duet, because it has a lot of chorus involvement, and it does end in quite a big chorus section. Technically, I guess that's part of the duet. I don't think that little section of it is iconic enough to take away from the fact that this song is about Point and Wilfred. And I think it's better than Hereupon, we're both agreed. Way better. This one just blows my socks off. And when it's done well and really quick and sharply, it can take your breath away. The lyrics are incredible. And so funny. It's an example of one that really ticks every box. Its emotional value is huge because these characters are really invested in this situation. Its comedic value is huge because in the midst of this life and death struggle, you go, oh no, well actually, I would say this word instead of that word. If you think about it, this number could have been Wilfred just coming on and doing this as a solo. And it still would have been really good. But having Jack Point, like, beside him, just, like, nitpicking everything he's saying, it makes a number that has huge life and death stakes and is really narratively important, because you do learn information in this song. I mean, the audience don't particularly, but you watch the chorus learning information. So it has both a huge dramatic effect and it's emotional, because the chorus is like, oh my goodness, Fairfax is dead. And depending on where you put Elsie in this number, Elsie can also hear this information as well, and she can emotionally react for that because her husband is apparently dead. So this is big news for absolutely everyone involved, a huge, huge moment. It's much needed in this opera that is often quite serious. This is a really wonderful, brilliant comedic moment, and it really shows off these two characters very, very well. Number 6, I've given to I Know a Youth from Ruddigore. Oh, Rose and Robin. What a great scene. What a great duet. The narrative importance of this duet cannot be overstated. I mean, yes, you learn that they're awkward in the scene beforehand, but this just nails it. This nails what it is to feel like, I love you, but convention means that I can't do anything about it. And just to witness that tension is so funny and also really moving. When they finally say, and thank you, sir, for your counsel true. I'll tell that maid what she ought to do. It can be really, really sad, but it's also funny. And it's just an example of Gilbert and Sullivan working together to produce something that's both really moving and absolutely hilarious. That bit in the middle that builds attention. If I were the youth, I would offer her, like, listen to me. I'm going to say this very slowly. You know who I'm really talking about here. You know I'm talking about me. Please understand me. You know, you can see the desperation of these characters trying to get this message across to each other. And I think it's a beautiful piece of work from both of them. 16 out of 20 for music. Yeah, it is nice music, but I've heard better in other pieces. 10 for lyrics. Oh, you're so perfectly encapsulated. I know they're not terribly sophisticated, but it doesn't matter in this case. In this case, it doesn't matter. It's good they're not sophisticated because they're talking like real people. And I really appreciate that. 10 for narrative importance. 8 for emotional value. I think there are other songs that are more emotional than this one, but the tension is just beautiful. 7 for comedic value. Well, again, I gave it the kind of baseline of, yes, that's a good, funny song, but I don't think its funniness is what makes this song so good. What makes this song so good for me is its complete understanding of reality and how difficult it is to be open and honest with the people you love if you have been raised in a certain way. Number 5, I have given to the kissing song from the Mikado. The thing is about these two characters, they are quite shallow, but for me, the comedy actually comes from their shallowness. There are life and death stakes, but somehow the situation is funny. So you get the best of both worlds. You maybe lose a little bit of the emotional weight, like it's no Jack Point and Elsie at the end of Yeomen of the Guard. It does have emotional value and you do feel for these characters and the situations they found themselves in, but I would say that you do lose some emotional value from it being a bit sillier. However, it is tremendously silly. 10 out of 10 for comedic value, 9 for lyrics, 8 for narrative importance. You know, it's not a vital part of the story. We maybe would have got the impression from the scene without this song, but can you imagine if you cut that song from this opera? That would not go down well. It is one of the most wonderful songs to do out of context as well. The fact that the kisses are meant to be in time with the music is extremely clever. And again, just like with I Know a Youth, Gilbert is having his characters say one thing but mean another in a way that is so blindingly obvious and in a way that it's actually quite real. In this case, I don't think it's as real maybe as the last one, but it's just so tremendously stupid. What I'm about to do now is what I will never do. This. It's topsy-turvy. This is the epitome of topsy-turvy, this song, and for that I appreciate it and love it, and I love these characters. I love this music, and I think this is probably the funniest duet for me in the whole canon. Number 4 is Let All Your Doubts Take Wing from Utopia Limited. I did think this one was going to do really well because this one is an absolute hoot. This is the one where Scapio and Phantis take it in turns to do an interpretive dance to show the other what they're feeling, and it's not grounded in reality, but it is hilarious. It gives the director and the actors scope to be hilarious. This song has to be funny. 10 out of 10 for comedic value, obviously. This is the only duet that I gave a 20 out of 20 for music. It is tremendously sophisticated. The counter melodies that are going on and the tune that happens during the dance is so catchy. It's another one of those tunes that I just feel like, oh, this automatic like jolt of happiness, which happens to me a lot with Utopia Limited, and I have no idea why. Sullivan just hits some kind of emotional spot in me musically that just like triggers lots of chemicals, and I don't know why that is. I gave it a 9 for lyrics. I think his lyrics are really funny. Of course it does. Of course that does. It signifies unselfishness. And some of the lyrics in that early part as well. I do not choose to be denied or wish to lose a lovely bride. If to refuse the king decide the royal shoes, then woe betide. I love that construction. And it's one of Gilbert's better pieces, I think, in Utopia Limited. The scansion is so satisfying. And I didn't give it a 10. I think some other songs are better than this one lyrically, but I do love the lyrics of this song. Where it loses marks is its emotional value, and I gave it a 5. We have learnt a little bit to love these characters, or at least we've learnt to love to hate them, but we're not emotionally connected to these characters at this point, so I have given them a low mark for that. So that's why this song maybe didn't do even better than it did. Number 3 is So Go To Him from Patience. Again, a really loved number, and I thought to myself, actually, before I made this list, oh, this is going to be one of those ones that everyone loves, but it's just because, oh, they've seen these performers do them and it was funny and that's kind of perpetuated and now it's just one that everyone loves because they love it. But actually, it's genuinely extremely good. I only gave it a 17 out of 20 for music. I think that there are some other musical pieces that are better than this one. But in terms of lyrics, like dead on, perfect lyrics. And again, it's another chance we get to see of characters being frustrated, but frustrated in a way that's not threatening. It's just funny. And it's comedic value of an obvious 10 there. Again, emotional value, I only gave it a 5 because even though these characters are frustrated, the stakes aren't terribly high, and I don't think it's one of those ones that particularly move people in a way that numbers 2 and even 1 do. I did give it a 10 out of 10 for narrative importance. It is perfectly placed. We've just had a bit of a down moment with Patience singing Love as a Plaintive Song, and this just brings us back up again. It's a showstopper. Bunthorne, Lady Jane, iconic characters, iconic song. The tune also appears in the overture, which is a plus, and it's immediately catchy. And another one that just gives me a big rush of serotonin. It's exciting, and it's bright and interesting. And I love how they're being just a little bit cruel, but I also love how joyful Jane is because she finally gets what she thinks she wants. I think it's almost a shame she ends up with the Duke at the end because I love the pairing of Jane and Bunthorne here. I love their dynamic. We now move on to number 2. And number 2 is All is Prepared. Not for sealing and for signing. All is prepared. Your gallant crew await you. From the Pirates of Penzance. Now, this is an example of when Sullivan used several different tunes during a duet. I mean, it's more like 3 duets than it is 1, but it has to be considered as 1 number. It's an example where he uses these different tunes, but the way he weaves them together is so much more sophisticated than the example we talked about way back at the start with the Sorcerer. No, no, ah, Frederick, hear me. Da-da-da-da-da-dum-bum. Stay, Frederick, stay. Perfect. And da-da-da-da-da-da. Ah, leave me not to pine. Those transitions are glorious. And the thing is, I even gave it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value, despite it having 1 joke in it. It's not even really a joke, it's just a release of tension. But we have been watching these characters have this conflict and work it out. And when you hear that in 1940, I of age shall be, and you hear how in love these characters are, and that they're willing to wait for each other, and the conviction they have, it's funny. Why is that funny? It's funny because it seems ridiculous that they would wait that long. And I don't mean to get mushy with you all, but I have recently fallen very deeply in love with a person, and playing Mabel the other week, it was the first time when I was actually able to deliver that line with utter conviction and have it not be a joke. It seems so long. Yes, I'll be strong. I would mean that, actually. And yes, the audience laugh at that because it seems silly, but I don't know. I'm actually not sure it's so silly, but it is funny because it's just such a huge thing to promise. And it's just after that big build-up, stay, Frederick, stay, and now, oh, leave me not to pine, like, please, please stay with me. These 2 characters travel through so much emotional turmoil in this little section. It is probably one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the canon, this duet here. Seeing these characters have a conflict and resolve it and end up more in love than they were before, and that's real life. It's exaggerated, but it's real. The only place this loss marks is, yeah, I gave it a 7 out of 10 for comedic value for that one little section it is quite funny. And I give it a 17 out of 20 for music, which I think is fair. I don't think I can really give it more than that musically. Even though it is set very well, it just does lack some of the sophistication I think that the other numbers have. So that's why it only came number 2. Now let's talk about number 1. As I was putting together this list, I did get an inkling this was going to come very high. As I was listening to it and thinking, how have I never realised how amazing this song is? This is a song that I gave a 19 out of 20 for music. I gave it a 10 out of 10 for lyrics. 10 out of 10 for narrative importance. In this instance, it's introducing 2 characters. But the way it manages to introduce these characters, the way it manages to tell you who these characters are, not by even them saying, this is what we're like as people, but just them telling us what their jobs are, which also is narrative exposition. It is probably the most successful introduction of 2 characters ever, because it tells you who the characters are purely from telling the story in the way they tell it, and the music helps us. We are telling you what kind of people these people are. I only gave it a 7 for emotional value because despite it invoking a huge amount of emotion in me purely from how amazing it is, I think that's the most I can give it. I don't think it really hits you emotionally more than that. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for people watching this show who've known about GNS for 16 years. I cannot imagine what it must have been like to be in that theatre, watch these characters being introduced and thinking, whoa, we have never seen characters like this in a Gilbert and Sullivan opera before. It's very funny. 8 out of 10 for comedic value. I've not even said what the song is yet. I'm doing that thing where you draw it out and to make tension. This song is the entrance of Scipio Infantis in Utopia Limited, and it's called In Every Mental Law. If you haven't ever listened to it before, I do recommend listening to it with the song that comes before it, just because if you play it where it starts, you miss a couple of notes that would help you understand how we got into this song. And then, whoa, we're in a different place. It's nuts. First of all, it's got that lovely exchanging of words that GNS do very well in other operas, but particularly well in this one. They are a unit. You immediately get an idea of who these characters are based on what Sullivan has done in the orchestra. There's this bassoon part that goes through the second phrase. This bassoon successfully tells you these characters are sinister, and then the lyrics, our duty is to spy. Listen to what the wind are doing. They're going, doo, doo. It's creepy, it's weird, it's artistic. It's one of the best examples of word painting, I think, is in the canon. It so quickly tells you who these characters are. And after you hear these lyrics, at our degree he dies without the least formality. You get this little jaunty, which is a restatement of the Make Way for the Wise Men, but in like a very frivolous comic way. And there's like a little echo, little afterthought. So much scope there for comedy. This song is so clever. I know it seems crazy to put this above the Frederick Mabel duet, but this one has everything. It ticks every box. And there should be more love in the world for this song. So please, if you do one thing today, go and listen to this song. Appreciate it in the context of everything I've just said. And I really hope you'll feel the same way I do about it. I was also surprised that I was so able to articulate exactly what it is that I love about it. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you didn't agree. Share your opinions in the comments. Maybe you love Rapture. Maybe that's your favourite duet. Maybe you don't know Utopia Limited. Maybe you'll now go away and listen to it and I've introduced you to one you didn't know very well. Please feel free to subscribe. Hit that like button there. I'm actually pointing at my lap. I'm not pointing at anything, but that's probably where it is there. I'm not made for this. This is weird for me. Next time is tenor arias. Until then, enjoy your respective lives.